Good morning, noon, or night. Welcome to Behind the Scenes, where we dig into the true meanings of the words we say. Today, we are going to be tackling a topic of debate that has sparked a feud in a certain Midwestern city for generations. I'm your host, Parker P., and this episode is brought to you by excessive amounts of chocolate-covered espresso beans.
It's Parker P, she's behind the scenes, so it's behind the scenes.
The Windy City, Chi-Town, Chirac. Known for its cold winters, great food, and mediocre sports teams, Chicago is the city of the Midwest, and like any other city, it has specific traits that define it. One trait I've observed in most Chicagoans is pride. People from Chicago are proud to call the city their home, even going as far as getting mad at suburban folks like myself for identifying as one of them. Yes, indeed, their pride comes with a little bit of stubbornness. Whether it's Cubs versus Sox, the Bears versus the Packers, or ketchup versus mustard on hot dogs, Chicagoans always stand and fight for their side. One such debate that seems to strike a particularly sensitive nerve is the pop versus soda debate. It is commonly believed that throughout the Midwest, pop is the overwhelmingly popular choice when describing sweetened carbonated beverages. A 2012 survey further popularized this theory using data analysis from social media. Chicago specifically, though, as a diverse hotspot, has a little bit of duality. In my experience, families that have lived in Chicago for multiple generations tend to be on the pop side of the spectrum, whereas newly relocated families are more likely to say soda. Linguistically, the sound pop goes really well with the stereotypical Chicago accent. The elongated ah sound is a Chicago trademark. Think the Bears.
The Bears. The Bears.
Hot dog.
Hot dog.
Garlic.
Garlic.
Although many features can place the Chicago accent, this is the most prominent and noticeable. Soda, on the other hand, does not allow for any what I'll call Chicago-style vowels, so that could be why the term pop is preferred by locals. It's important for me to acknowledge my own bias. I prefer the term soda. I've only lived in Chicago for the past 8 years, and while that's a hefty chunk of my lifetime and a very influential portion of it, I never quite assimilated in terms of having a Chicago accent. All of the people I'll be interviewing have lived in the Chicago area their entire lives and have grown up surrounded by Chicago's culture. Even so, there is still a disparity between pop and soda. Today, I'll be interviewing people on both sides of the pop versus soda debate and getting down to why they call it pop or soda. First up, Heather Shortall. She's a Chicago suburbs native who prefers to use the term pop. After catching up for a few minutes, we got into the real questions. So Heather, for how many generations has your family lived in the Chicagoland area?
Probably for about 2 or 3 generations.
Okay. And would you describe yourself as having a Chicago accent?
I wouldn't say I really have a thick Chicago accent.
Okay. All right. Are you ready? Why do you say
Yeah.
pop instead of soda?
Why do I say pop?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's because my whole family says it, so it kind of just, you go with it because that's how I was raised.
Right. Okay. And does saying pop make you feel like more of a Chicagoan?
I would not say that because I honestly thought I said soda more, but that's not the thing.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Heather, so much for your time today. As Heather pointed out, she didn't even realize that she said pop instead of soda. In fact, as one of her best friends for a long time, I didn't even really know that she said pop. And it took other people from different parts of the country to listen to her and to notice her Chicago accent for her to realize that she even said pop. Definitely goes to show how normalized it is in Chicago. Next up, Emma. She's a Chicagoland suburban person who prefers to use the term soda. For how many generations has your family lived in the Chicagoland area?
2 or 3.
Would you describe yourself as having a Chicago accent?
No.
All right, here comes the big one. Why do you say soda instead of pop?
Pop just doesn't make sense. It's soda.
Okay, sounds good. And does saying soda make you feel like less of a Chicagoan?
No, do people in Chicago say pop?
Hey, that's what I'm here trying to figure out. Thank you, Emma, for your time. It is important to point out that Emma is technically from Naperville, which is a suburb about 30 minutes away from Chicago. And Emma's been to Chicago countless times, but still, she spends the majority of her time in her hometown. That's perhaps why she didn't even know that it was a trend for Chicagoans to say pop instead of soda. Next up is Michaela Del Santo. Although she technically lives in the suburbs, she's a quick 10-minute drive from the heart of the city and only a 2-minute drive from the border. Okay, Michaela, for how many generations has your family lived in the Chicago area?
Oh boy, probably as far back as like my great grandparents.
Oh, wow, okay. And would you describe yourself as having a Chicago accent?
I wouldn't, but other people have told me. I go to school in Wisconsin, and people have told me that I have a Chicago accent.
Right. Okay, and why do you say pop instead of soda?
I've just always said pop. I feel like soda is like so formal. I don't. Not that it's like one is more like special than the other. I've just always said like pop and not soda. Just always.
Right. And does saying pop make you feel like more of a Chicagoan?
It didn't up until I went to school in Wisconsin again. Like
Right.
everywhere in Wisconsin, everybody says soda, and like the northern parts of like Wisconsin and like Minnesota and stuff, everybody says soda. So when I said pop once, everybody gave me a weird look, and I was like, oh, okay, that must be like a Chicago thing.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. There was one major commonality between Heather and Michaela, or the two people who prefer to say pop. They don't say pop because it sounds nicer or because they chose to say it, but rather because it's how they were raised. Especially so for people living in Chicago, surrounded by other Chicagoans, you don't even notice that saying pop is something that's out of the norm, because in Chicago it really is the norm. Most people tend to say pop. To answer the question of soda versus pop, I'll leave you with this. Why does anyone say anything? We all just say the words that we learn. Neither is right or wrong, and honestly, it's not that deep. I thought that perhaps saying pop would maybe evoke feelings of home or Chicago pride, but it's quite literally just a way of identifying a sweet carbonated beverage. Based on these interviews, people say their preferred term for soda pretty much completely subconsciously. Heather wasn't even aware that she said it. Emma didn't even know it was a thing to say in Chicago, although she lives right outside of it. And Michaela didn't even know that pop was a local thing to say in Chicago until traveling outside of the state. In fact, I questioned her a little bit further about it, and I asked her, why do you say pop? Do you think it sounds nicer, like linguistically? And she said it really wasn't as much of a choice, it was just what she'd grown up hearing. So that's it. There's your answer. Is it soda or pop? It's just whatever you grew up listening to. Thank you all for listening, and make sure to tune in next week on Behind the Scenes. What is the meaning of our words?
It's time to leave, but thanks for listening to Behind the Scenes.